welcome members and officers and members of the public that are joining us for the Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 8th of March 2022. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor Shane Bartlett, Chairman of the committee, and I have a Vice Chairman, Andy Canning. We'd like to remind members about the microphones. Please remember that when you use your microphone, you must press the button to switch off your microphone after you've spoken, as the system only allows one microphone to be in use at any one time. The red light means that your microphone is on and the camera will automatically pan towards you. Please also note that the microphone should not be moved. So I've moved to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies. Ms. Watson, do we have any apologies?
Apologies from Councillors Brown and Trite.
Thank you. If I move to item 2 on the agenda, the minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meetings held on the 25th of March 2021, the 11th of May 2021, the 12th of May 2021, the 13th of July 2021, the 21st of September 2021, 16th of November 2021, 7th of January 2022, and the 25th of January 2022. We need the minutes to be confirmed as the correct record. So if members are happy, I'm going to take those on block unless there is any dissent. Thank you, members. I'll take those as confirmed. If I move to item 3 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does any member have any declaration of interest they wish to make, and if so, the action they will take? And please be minded of agenda item number 8 and the information you have received from the monitoring officer. Does any member have a declaration of interest? Councillor Roberts.
Chairman, thank you. Yes, I do the job, but I don't feel that it impacts on my decision. So I'm happy to take part in the debate.
Councillor Took.
Thanks, Chairman. I have a dispensation for this item.
Thank you, Councillor Took. No other members? Sorry, Councillor Heatley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a former dog owner. My dog sadly died. Once again, I don't think this will have any effect on my well-being, the discussion we are having, and so I intend to take part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. Councillor Shortell.
Thank you, Chairman. I am a dog owner. In fact, I've got 2, but that hasn't influenced my debate regarding the subject on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Shortell. So I've moved to agenda item number 4, Chairman's update, and Ms. Watson to read out an update on the planning peer review provided by Head of Planning Mike Garrity. Thank you.
Okay, this is a briefing note regarding the Planning Advisory Service peer review. A peer review of the Planning Service was undertaken between November 2019 and January 2020, 7 months into the life of the new council. It was led by the Planning Advisory Service, which is part of the Local Government Association. Its key findings were that operational detail was needed to flesh out the service's transformation plans and ambitions. A single software system and consistent approach to performance management was urgently needed in the Development Management Service. The Council would need to keep a tight grip on the local plan to ensure delivery by 2024, given the huge challenges of arriving at a sustainable and supported development strategy. The service needs additional resource and information technology that is fit for purpose. The review, which took place before the pandemic, initially made 10 recommendations. An additional one was added to review the service in light of COVID-19. Progress has been made in all 11 areas and several completed. In particular, a review has been completed of the entire service, new structure, additional posts in under-resourced areas. The new structure has been implemented with appointments made to the majority of posts. 4.3 million records from 5 of the 6 legacy authorities have now been converged into a single software system, with only the former county council records to migrate, which is taking place this month. Progress on the emerging local plan has taken place with significant amounts of evidence gathering and wide-ranging public consultation. We are now considering the consultation responses and taking stock of the future direction of strategy choices, including conversations with government. This may have implications for the timescales which need to be reviewed. A comprehensive package of initiatives has been introduced to address a combination of pressures on the Development Management Service, which had resulted from a significant uplift in planning casework, impact of COVID-19 and backlog of applications. This has included streamlining of validation processes, new consultation protocols, skills development, effective use of the new software system, and effective use of additional interim resource. This has resulted in a complete reduction in the backlog of applications awaiting validation from a peak of 10 weeks delay in August 2021. Applications are now being validated within the same week of receipt. This has shifted additional pressures onto case officers and consultees, but the service is now determining between 500 to 600 applications per week, over 100 higher than those being received on average. Some challenges remain, including recruitment across the service. This has proved particularly difficult in relation to more experienced planning officers, as well as in other expert roles such as conservation and minerals and waste. Committee is asked to note that Planning Service invited the PAS to provide some targeted assistance and guidance aside from the peer review on development management. This has provided some helpful and constructive suggestions. PAS noted that the authority has adopted a range of procedures that are widely accepted as being good practice and accord with the advice in the PASDM Challenge Toolkit. This was one of 3 LGA peer reviews that have been conducted since the Council was created. A corporate review took place in October 2019 and a finance peer review in October 2021. The Council is keen to consolidate the learning from the 3 reviews. Check-ins are being organised with finance in March and planning in the summer, both of which will contribute to a wider corporate review in September-October. A report will be produced for the scrutiny committees on the outcome of this.
Thank you, Ms Watson. If I move now to agenda item 5, public participation. Ms Watson, are there any questions from the public? Thank you. If I move to agenda item 6, questions from members. Ms Watson, are there any questions from members, please?
No questions received on this occasion either.
Thank you. I will now move to agenda item 7, local land charge service update. You will note in your report we have a recommendation for members that are asked to note and comment on the progress and current service position. And the reason for the recommendation is to provide members with information about the current service, improved search response times, and any further action to be taken. And I believe the presenting officer will be Miss Evans, Head of Legal Services.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I last reported to this committee in September 2021. And my report at that time explained what land searches are, the target response times and the actual response times that we were achieving at that time. I've also provided some brief updates via the chairman at committees that you've attended between September and now. I am pleased to report that the team have made huge progress and response times for land charge searches have reduced dramatically. Before I get into the detail of that, I just want to take the opportunity to recap on some of the actions that the team have been taking from September till now, and those activities have helped us to achieve better response times. So the September report provided you with some key reasons why the responses were delayed. and also set out for you some actions that we intended to take. We've employed more staff into the team, so the size of the team has increased. Those new staff were trained and we have them working on searches since October. We've completed the last of the land charge system transfers into the new planning system. That took place in October. We have weekly data from that new system that enables the team to plan their workloads, monitor their progress, and update information on our website. And we have a new single email address that makes it easier for customers to contact the team and easier for us to keep track of emails. In terms of the response times themselves, with the increase in staff numbers, the use of the new IT system and the effort by the team, response times have been reducing since October 2021. And as members will see from section 11 of my report, which is on page 7 to 9 of the agenda pack, and also appendix 2, the reduction in response time since October is sustained and continuing, and we anticipate returning to a 10 working day target shortly. In summary, the response times have reduced from an average of 61 working days in October to 26 working days in February. At the time of writing the report, it was 28 working days, but that was because we were partway through the month at the time of report drafting. In that same time, section 11 of the report and appendix 1 shows you the volume of search numbers that we've been receiving from October through to February. You can see the search numbers are slowing, but they are still above the searches received pre-pandemic. In terms of future action, there are a couple of items that I wanted to draw to your attention. As I explained in my September report, while we have our new planning system, we're also required to keep land charges registers. And 2 of those were within the old council systems and so have been moved into the new system. 2 of those previous land charge registers sat outside of the former council systems, and they still sit outside of our new system. You've heard from the update from Mr. Garrity that the Planning Transformation Project intends to work on the final county council migration this month. We're waiting for that to complete because the resource needed to move and migrate the land charge registers is the same staff resource who are working on the Planning Transformation Project and the county council migration. So work is taking place at the moment as part of the Planning Transformation Project to scope how much work is involved in converging all of the land charge registers into one, and that work should be happening within this year. And then the final bit that I wanted to draw to your attention is in section 14 of the report. It's on page 10. It's about a customer-facing portal. So at the moment, the land charges service receives some of its search inquiries via agents, and they come electronically into our system. And other searches are received by email. And where those searches are received by email, our staff then have to call those people back to take payments over the telephone. So one other piece of work, also part of the Planning Transformation Project, is to make use of the new system that we've purchased to enable all of our customers to submit their searches and pay as they submit their searches without staff having to call them back to take payment. So those two items are future activity items. So I think in conclusion, I hope that members can see that steps taken from August 20, but most recently from the last report to you in September 21, are working. The delays with returning searches are reducing. As I said last time, while my report focuses internally on this service and provides you with an update, I don't underestimate the impact that any delays have had on customers during this time. I again apologise for the ongoing delays, but I hope that members and also members of the public will be reassured by the action that has been taken, the progress made and the clear direction of travel. And I want to express my thanks to the Land Charges team for the efforts that they've made. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms Evans. Councillor Jill Haynes, who's the Corporate Development Transformation Portfolio Holder, spoke to me yesterday. She's not attending today. We were in agreement and she was pleased that the progression of the land service charges appears to be moving in the right direction. I've got Councillor Knock-Lacey-Clark, and I'll give him the courtesy if he wanted to make any comment at this point. I appreciate if he doesn't. It's not his portfolio. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Chairman. That's very kind of you. I have no constructive comment to make other than to pass my thanks on for the reduction in time taken for the land searches, because I know that's something that's taken up a large part of my mailbox. I'm sure everybody's here, and so it's great to see something going in the correct direction of travel.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Okay, so we have no members from outside of the committee present, obviously due to COVID restrictions in the chamber at the moment, so I'm going to move to questions from the committee, and my first councillor to speak is Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'm delighted on the progress as my colleague Knock-Lacey-Clark, and certainly amongst my parishes this has not been a feature for the past few months where it did appear. In our budget setting we were looking at increasing fees by around about 2.5% across the council. What increase has been put on, if any, on land charges? And does the department, with the additional staff and the fee income, is there a sort of rough P&L for that department, and how is it looking?
Thank you for the questions. If I turn to the first one about fees, at the moment, the fees were reviewed about 12 months ago, and we have no plans to review them again at the moment. That in part is to recognise that we've been in delay with the land charge searches over a period of time. We need to get the searches back to a steady and sustained rate, and at that point then we'll be able to look at both staffing and fees, but to do so at the moment may be a bit premature for our service. And the second point about the staffing costs, at the time I reported to you in September, forecasts were showing that the cost of additional staff that we'd employed would be covered by the income received over the year. The February-March budget forecast is looking like we may not recover quite enough income to cover the costs in year, but because land charges is a chargeable service, we look both in year and then we compare one year to the next. So while we may not recover sufficient income this year, we would certainly look to do so next. And part of the staff structure are 2 additional temporary posts that I brought in to try and deal with the backlog that we had. And those temporary posts are due to come to an end within the next financial year.
Thank you very much for that. Just one, when you say it's stabilising, to how many days do you expect it to be stable before we can then start looking at covering all our costs?
Thank you. So the government target is 10 working days to return searches. We're at an average of 26 working days at the moment. So I would like to see us consistently achieving search response times, not of an average, but of an actual below the 10 working days for searches. And at that point, then we can start to have a look at, like I said, staffing numbers and also fees. But we would need to see a sustained period of time of us returning searches within 10 working days, I think, before we would want to conduct any reviews.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Took, did you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much for a comprehensive report. I'm very pleased things are going the right way. I was interested in the portal. Just in terms of, is it purely for efficiency, or will there be cost savings deriving from that improved efficiency? And what sort of payback are we looking for in terms of covering the cost of it?
So I don't have the details of the costings of the portal with me today. In part, it's making the most of the system that we've purchased. It's a function that we didn't have within any of the predecessor systems. And I'm keen that we use the new system to its fullest extent. It is mainly about efficiencies, both for members of the public who put the search requests in, and also for staff. We acknowledge that putting a search in by email and then having to have somebody telephone you to take the payment is not the most efficient way of doing it, and it's not the most efficient use of staff time either. So that's the predominant reason for looking at making use of a customer portal. There should be further updates on that item and also the convergence of land charge registers as part of updates to members generally on the progress with the planning transformation project, because both items of work will be carried out within that project.
Thank you very much. So my assumption is that members of the public who are putting in these requests via the portal can then track progress over the portal. Is that something that's possible? So that might help ease calls in.
Again, I would have to go back and check details of the portal and how that's going to work. The information that I was given to enable me to come here today was all about the efficiencies to do with how we receive the searches and particularly how they're paid for, because it's the payment process that takes staff time at the moment. But if there are further questions, then I'm happy to provide extra information, or as I said, there will be extra information coming as part of the planning transformation project updates that you will all receive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Took. Do you have any other questions from any committee members? Councillor Andrews? Councillor Heatley, did you want to speak as well? Certainly.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms Evans. Excellent report. Glad that we're down to 26 days now. When do you really expect to get to 10 working days? Before or after the migration? And just following on from that, is there a project plan on migration and when we're going to actually get those two systems into the main system? Is there a project plan? Thank you.
Thank you. I would say with some caution that we ought to hit on the trajectory that we're going on at the moment, where we're reducing response times at about the rate of 10 working days a month, we ought to hit an average of 10 working days at some point within the next 2 months. That's what we're aiming for, and that's what the data is showing us at the moment. The other part of the question that you asked is more about the planning transformation project than it is about the land charges service provision. So there will be details about, there is a project plan, but the project plan is part of the planning transformation project. And there are 2 items on that plan, both the portal that I've just been talking about and also the convergence of the land charges registers. Both are waiting at the moment, so they're in the plan, but they're waiting at the moment on the former county council migration this month, before we can get into the detailed planning of the next steps.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to have that target and that goal to go towards them. So I commend you the efforts that you and your staff have put in to get this sorted, because my mailbox certainly isn't filled up with land charges issues at the moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andrews has just asked my question, but I will speak just to express my appreciation of the sheer hard work that must be involved in such a good result. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Shortell, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I want to congratulate the team, really. It has been a big issue in the past, and something that a lot of developers and project applicants have complained about. And I think fantastic job, well done. And you know, when we get down to 10 days, then I think that's a marvellous achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shortell. I've got a couple of questions myself, Ms Evans. First one is in terms of the cost of the additional staff. I think we've had a discussion around this before, that the additional staff that have been needed to accommodate getting the land charges back on in line, that increase in revenue from the searches we've had, is that covering the cost of those staff? We don't think we budgeted for it.
Thank you, Chairman. The expectation at the time that I brought more staff in was that the extra income from searches would cover the cost of staff. The March forecast is looking like we may be just short of that, and so that the cost of the extra staff won't be covered entirely from the income brought in. But the land charges service, because it is a traded chargeable service, we don't look just at the income brought in within the year. We can compare year on year. So if the fees aren't covered, if the staff costs aren't covered within this financial year, then we would look to ensure that we brought in sufficient income next year to make sure that they're covered. And again, of the staff brought in September, we brought in 4 extra staff, and they're permanent, but we also have 2 temporary members of staff within the service who were on fixed-term contracts. So those contracts will end during the next 12 months, which again will start to reduce the staff cost. But it should still give us enough staff to maintain the level of service that we should be.
Okay, thank you. My second question would be, at page 10 at 14.4 in the report, I just wondered if we could have an assurance that the public, after the portal is set up, would still be able to speak to an officer to arrange a face-to-face or arrange a face-to-face meeting. Now we're coming out of COVID. In terms of inquiries over land service charges, it's not going to be done electronically. There will still be the opportunity for members to either speak to an officer or meet with an officer.
Yes, so the customer portal is the focus is about how we receive our search requests and how we take payment for them. So the email address for people to be able to contact the service will remain the same and active, and people will be able to call. You may recall that while we've been while social distancing arrangements have been in place, we haven't provided the personal search service, which is the service where people can come into our offices and view the land charge register and take notes from it. So instead, while we've been, over the last 2 years, we've been providing that service instead by email. That will continue to be provided by email for at least the next couple of months, but we will need to be reviewing that so that we can return to providing personal search information face-to-face at our offices. So that's something that we'll be looking at next.
Thank you, Ms Evans. Do you have any more questions from the committee? No? Okay, well, I think judging by the responses from the committee members, if you could take back to your team our grateful thanks for the hard work that they've done and the work that you've been doing and the legal team have been doing. I really do appreciate that, you know, the amount of work that was involved in this and getting it back on course again. And I'm very pleased to see that it's moving in the right direction. So if you could thank your team on our behalf, please. Thank you. Okay, members, if I move to agenda. Members, apparently some of your voices aren't being picked up on the microphone, so if you could ensure that you're speaking close to the microphone. I don't seem to be having a problem with the echo that there is in this chamber. Thank you. So we'll move to agenda item 8, post-implementation of review of dog-related public spaces protection order. Members will see there are a number of recommendations within this report, with Lyme Regis to review the issues and availability of dog exercise areas in this locality, officers to continue to work with the Town Council and other interested parties to explore options. Recommendation 2, enforcement. To improve the effectiveness of the enforcement, officers will continue to work with partner organisations and identify authorised appropriate officers to assist with enforcement duties. Recommendation 3, enforcement. To obtain improved local information which will help ensure a more targeted approach to patrolling and enforcement. This may include local surveys and directed community engagement. Recommendation 4, public awareness. The Council's website gives locations where the restrictions are in place, but does not give information about alternative locations where dog walkers can exercise their dogs without restriction. Officers should look to address this. And recommendation 5, monitoring. For officers to encourage and monitor further feedback about the order, which will inform the statutory review in 2023, to advise on any work which your committee would like officers to undertake in respect of dog-related public space protection order. So just for clarity for the members of the public listening in, and I have a request to speak from the monitoring officer. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. At the start of the meeting, 3 members declared that they were dog owners. This is a post-implementation review of the Public Spaces Protection Order, including questions relating to enforcement against dog owners. Part of my role as your monitoring officer is to keep you safe, safe from third-party complaints about you taking part in business when you've got interests. One of the 3 councillors who's declared that they are a dog owner, Councillor Took, has taken the precaution of obtaining a dispensation in order to be able to participate fully this morning. So what I was going to suggest, Chairman, if the other 2 members, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Shortell, were to confirm that you wish to have a dispensation to take part this morning, that will ensure that you are protected from third-party complaints. Because I think it's entirely reasonable that you should take part. The dispensation that Councillor Took has got focuses on it being important that dog owners bring a particular perspective to your debate. But Not everyone will share that point of view. I want to avoid third-party complaints from outside this chamber, and I think a dispensation to the two councillors without that at present will protect them and regularise the position. So if you're happy for me to deal with that outside of the meeting, then I'll arrange for the two of you to have a dispensation.
Councillor Roberts.
Could I just clarify, John, the dispensation will enable us to take part in the debate today?
Chairman, the dispensation is to enable members to participate fully in the debate today, to contribute fully as you ordinarily would, and if it came to it, to take part in a vote.
Councillor Châtel.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Reasons for recommendation are to ensure the provisions are operating effectively, to ensure that the provisions are being enforced in a proportionate and equitable manner, and to help inform the preparation of subsequent provisions. And I believe that the presenting officer is Mrs. Janet Moore, Service Manager, Environmental Protection. Ms. Moore.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. So my name is Janet Moore, and I'm the Service Manager for Environmental Protection. I've been asked to give you an overview on how our current dog-related PSPO, Public Spaces Protection Order, is working. But before I start, I'd like to play you a short video that's been shot by a couple of our councillors, which hopefully will set the scene. Thank you, Lindsay. So a PSPO is a tool that we can use to help prevent antisocial behaviour and, in this case, irresponsible dog ownership. The broad aim is to reduce the risk of fouling, dog bites and other aggressive behaviours by dogs. But they also have value in ensuring that certain sections of land are kept dog-free. As you can see in the video, places like children's play areas, sports fields, that sort of thing, it's really important. But at the same time, we need to recognise the welfare needs of dogs and the positive contribution that they bring to society. And hopefully in this way, we can have public open spaces that are welcoming and safe for everyone to use. So our PSPO came into force on the 1st of January 2021, so it's been active for just over a year now. Prior to this, we had a number of disparate orders and bylaws in the predecessor councils, so as they were expiring, it was important to harmonise them under one set of rules, which covered the whole of the district area. The order went through the usual democratic process, which included a statutory consultation that lasted 15 weeks, so quite a long consultation, and resulted in a high level of respondents. I think there were about 8,600, which sort of demonstrates the strength of feeling that's held about dog ownership. As explained in the video and report, the order sets out a number of restrictions, and just to recap, these are the removal and proper disposal of feces, excluding dogs from identified pieces of land, either totally or at certain times of year, or having a dog on lead again in certain areas, either totally or at certain times of year, and as directed by authorised officers. This review has looked at complaints received since implementation and also sought the views of town and parish councils. So the town and parish council officers report that during the COVID period, they felt that there was a reduced incidence of fouling, but as the restrictions have lifted, this started to increase again. They also report that there are ongoing issues with people ignoring the restrictions, especially around sports, marked sports pitches, and especially when they're not there to address the issue at the time. Where concerns have been raised by the town and parish councils, we have responded by giving more support in terms of patrols in the hotspot areas, or where needed, we give more signage or renew the signage if that's needed as well. So in terms of complaints to us, we haven't really seen a marked shift over the years. So for instance, in the last 2 years, we've received about 300 reports a year about aggressive behaviours and about 180 dog fouling complaints. The key issues that have arisen during this first year of implementation centre around the off-peak restriction on the front beach at Lyme Regis and the general perceptions around enforcement. So if I talk a bit about Lyme Regis, so during the summer period, it's obviously important that children and families can play on beaches, our popular beaches, hazard-free. So we have had exclusions for many years, and that's worked well. In the winter period, there is no restriction. So the exception to this, of course, is the front beach at Lyme Regis, where there is a dog on lead restriction during the winter period. And this is because Lyme Regis Town Council report that there's an ongoing, well, all year round fouling problem. So rather than exclude the dogs from the beaches all year round, we've sought a compromise and have a dog on lead restriction in the winter period. And for the most part, this has worked well because we've identified the adjacent beaches as being areas where people can take their dog and play with their dog off lead. But we have had some complaints from a couple of residents with severe mobility issues that they feel these alternative arrangements are unsafe for them. We have looked at things we can do to address this. So for instance, we have supplied some matting, which takes them in a safe way down to the sandier parts of the beach. but we continue to look at other options that we can do to help this situation. Enforcement, particularly in terms of dog fouling, is always difficult, but I don't think we can underestimate the value of the officer interaction with members of the public whilst they're out on patrols. I mean, they chat, they go up and chat to people about sort of dog training, microchipping, neutering, proper dog care, so that's all really important interaction. And I think just having the order in place, like a lot of rules, actually deters irresponsible dog ownership in the first place. We're not alone. Our neighbouring authorities also struggle with the enforcement role. I mentioned Cornwall Council in my report, and they have served more fixed penalty notices than us, but their service model is very different from us. And although it's really important to look at it, and we will be looking at their model, I think we don't want to detract from the good work that the team, the animal welfare and dog control team do in other areas. So, for instance, you might have seen the press release yesterday about a piece of work we're doing on the illegal puppy trade. So we're going to try and disrupt the market there by interrogating online adverts, investigating them and taking them off if they're not properly licensed. We're also going to give members of the public who are thinking about buying puppies more information, what they should look for, red flags, that sort of thing, and also more information on breeders on what they need to do to comply with the legislation. So I would like to ask members to support us in our recommendations, which we hope will continue the good work around the order. So in summary, these are to undertake a further review of the issues around dog exercise area in Lyme Regis, to look at ways we can improve the effectiveness of enforcement, to provide more information to dog walkers about where they can walk their dog in areas that have no restrictions, and to continue monitoring complaints and feedback so we're fully informed when we start the statutory review process in 2023. Thank you, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms Moore. And it is a very comprehensive report. Thank you. So, for any member who wishes to speak outside of the committee, I'm going to go to Councillor Knock-Lacey-Clark, who's indicated he wishes to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. That's really kind of you to allow me to speak. I see the PSPO very much as the stick in the whole carrot and stick scenario. But I do think we need to make sure we have the carrot as well. And part of that is making it safe and easy for people to be able to dispose of their dog waste and be a responsible dog owner. And it leads me to think, have we noticed a spike in people leaving waste when the dog bins are full around them? Because I'm aware that during COVID and recent months, there have been a level of staffing issues occasionally on the waste rounds, and quite often then the public bins are left first while we're doing residents, which makes sense to prioritise the residents. And so have we noticed a spike in that recently? And is that something we're looking at working with the team on to make sure that the frequency they're emptied is enough to support our PSPO in keeping those areas clean and safe for people to use?
Mr Duggan, I believe you want to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. In Dorset, the litter bins that are serviced by this council are multi-use, so they're used for litter and they can be used for wrapped dog feces as well, and that takes place well. The town councils. Some town councils do provide individual bins for dog waste, and the town councils have responsibility for emptying those. We have noticed a spike during lockdown. Speaking to my colleagues in Dorset Waste Services, people have been at home more. They've been going out when restrictions have allowed to walk their dogs, and the bins have been filling up more quickly. Dorset Waste Services have responded where they can. We have had additional staff on, but as you'll be aware, they have also suffered from COVID implications as well, with staff having to isolate. So there has been a spike. Dorset Waste have done their best to keep the bins empty and free. Where the waste crews and also our dog wardens notice that particular bins are overused and causing a problem, we do look at the capacity of those bins, and we also look to see whether there's potential for an additional bin to go in. So with the people on the wardens on the ground, we do keep our eyes on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duggan. Councillor Lacey-Clark, do you wish to come back, or are you happy with the answer?
Be happy with the answer. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. If I now move to committee members, if I can have Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a couple of points, if I may. I couldn't find anywhere in this a definition of the length of the lead, and I'm not sure, and some of the problems with dogs is the ones on very long extending leads, particularly the more aggressive dogs. And I wonder if that's something that occurs. And so that's one point. There were a couple of little items in the wording that I wanted to just raise. In 12.1, you talk about agricultural stock. If you're from an agricultural background, that could mean your barn full of wheat. It probably should say livestock, if we could ask for that. And the other one, I think, for clarification, in 13.14, it advises people to take home their dog waste and dispose of it in the waste stream. Most of my villages do have streams, and I would be horrified if they were dumped in the stream. Could that just be in your waste bin? Because I think that would explain it a lot better for our residents. My other point, and this is a more directly, I chair the Harbours Committee. Lyme Regis Harbour on the Cobb, there is a working area where people unload their catches. And quite often there are things like the netting bags of whelks that are there waiting collection. The fishermen say the public get very cross when they ask them not to allow their dogs even on leads there, because they cock their legs on these, and these are food products. And I wonder if it's something we could possibly think about on the working area of the Cobb, in the unloading areas. It's been raised for me to, through the harbours, to bring that out. So there's several points there, I'm afraid, but thank you for the report.
The lead length is 2 metres, and that is actually in the order, but I will find that for you and send that to you, because we do recognise that, you know, anything longer really, it's very difficult to have the dog under control. There, as I mentioned before in the report, there is a statutory review, and that will be starting sort of this time next year. So we'll certainly take on board the points about dogs being under control along the harbour area, but I think we can probably look at that beforehand as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Took.
Thanks, Chair. Excellent report. Thank you very much. I agree with pretty much everything in there. Okay. Can you hear? Thank you. Excellent report. Thank you very much. I agree with pretty much everything in there. On the public awareness, you mentioned that the council's website gives locations where restrictions are in place, and you want to expand it to show where you could. You can't go here, but try here instead. where I live, we're very close to BCP, who also have a lot of beaches. Is there any possibility that we can work together with BCP and say, well, these are the beaches, and these are, and on our website and possibly on their website, have a comprehensive view of Dorset's beaches, so that a lot of local people know where they go, they know they know the rules. We do get 1 or 2 visitors at certain times of the year. It might be nice for them to be able to pick up where we're going and just work together. Is that something that's possible?
I think that's a very good suggestion. So I can certainly talk to my colleagues in BCP and see if we can produce something that shows the landscape across the 2 localities. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hook. Did you wish to come back, or was that your last question? Councillor Shortell.
That's it. I'm back on. The problem is identifying designated areas, really, where people are aware of the restrictions and what they can do and what they can't do with their dogs. It's very difficult when you've got dogs which are going around the outside of playing fields, and to keep that gap from the edge of the playing field to the edge of the actual grounds, sometimes it's quite difficult. And you think, what are the restrictions and what have you? Notification probably is the obvious thing, is whereby you can notify the public and make it absolutely clear exactly what their permissions are. I'm thinking of terms like, for instance, King George V in Ferndown. They've got a notice up which clearly states exactly how far from the edge of the playing fields you're allowed to be. But I also note that, in fact, there's those lower fields have also got marked playfields on, which are very rarely used for games. And, they'd probably take advantage of that if they're allowed to. But I think it's notification, telling people exactly what they're allowed to do. I know probably, supervision is a bit difficult because, of course, that requires manpower. So that makes it a bit difficult. Also, going back to what I was saying, they did provide at that area that I mentioned a little dispenser for doggy bags. But they disappeared very quickly, and so I can understand why those are probably not feasible, because of course people will take those rather than 1 or 2 at a time. But yeah, it's just really telling the public exactly what the actual restrictions are and making it perfectly clear. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I think we do try to provide signage where there are, basically town and parish councils come to us and we provide them with the signage that they want. So hopefully in most places there will be signs about, what you can do and what you can't do. And it's also about people, authorised officers within the towns and parishes, and our authorised officers when they're out on patrol. It's talking to people. It's, it's making sure that people understand why we have this PSPO in place and what they can do as well. So I do get your point. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I know it's very difficult because, of course, it's very difficult to enforce, and that's really, the ultimate. But we're again, we still got no manpower actually to do that, and I'm quite diligent in the fact that I make sure that I clean up after my dogs. But unfortunately, I quite often see that other people are not of the same mind, so it's very difficult to administer that. Thank you.
And I think that's important to remember that is the minority, actually. Most people are sort of law-abiding and they do as they should do and are responsible dog owners, so it is the minority. And we really are trying to push town and parish councillors in terms of authorising their officers and getting the proper training so they can actually, you know, because they're the best people, they're on site, so they're the best people to engage with the public and also act as enforcement officers as well.
Just a quick question then. Is the onus on the town and parish councils to request signage? Sorry? Yes. Is it the onus on the town and parish councils to request signage from the council to provide, or do we have any means by which we can suggest that route for those councils?
So when the order came into force, we wrote to all the town and parish councils asking what sort of signage that they need. So they sent back whatever they needed and we sent it out to them. But, you know, they do come to us. If there's particular issues, ongoing issues, they will come back to us and ask us, well, you know, we have this issue, what can you do? And as I said, we'll either patrol more in the hotspots areas, or we'll look at the signage and see if we need to review the signage or reposition it or whatever it might be.
Thank you, Councillor Shortell. I have a number of questions myself. With reference to page 18 at 10.3, which talks about residual dog fouling, dog attacks and aggressive behaviours, I was just wondering what response the officers get from members of the public in reporting those instances. For instance, close to my own area, on social media, I had reports of dog-on-dog attacks, both at the Cranbourne Road Sang site at Burts Hill and also at the By the Way field in Wimborne and Coal Hill, respectively. And I just wondered how easy is it for the public to report those attacks and how informed officers are on that.
Thank you. So anybody can report any issue through the normal council procedure. So they can either report online or they can phone in, and that's logged on our system. And we have a response rate of 3 days to start an investigation about that complaint. So we look at everything that comes in and we respond accordingly.
And officers feel that that is working okay? And officers feel that that is working okay, that process? The members are finding it easy to report those instances, are they?
I'm not aware that there are any issues.
Thank you. So I'll move to my next question at page 19 at 10.4. Is there a view from officers that any town or parish council does not comply with the policy surrounding PSPOs for dogs could be at legal risk, especially with regards to possible illness resulting to child exposure, as laid out in 10.4 on land that is owned by a parish or town council?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question. Sorry.
The PSPO is laid out, says that there is a risk to health. The PSPO is there to accommodate all, so not just dogs and dog owners, but other people that use those areas of recreational space. So I am aware within the report that 2 towns decided to not comply with the regulations as were and took their option as they could to not comply with it. And I'm asking, do the officers have a view as to whether or not there is a legal risk to those parish and town councils if they don't comply with the PSPO order that's come down from Dorset Council?
They have a legal right to take up that consent, so they can ask for specific or general consent. So in effect, it means that we can't enforce in that area. They give consent for that activity to happen.
Thank you, Chair. Just adding to Janet's response there, from a public health point of view, we feel it's really important that the controls are in place. There are serious disease conditions that can be spread from dog feces, particularly where in areas where children are playing or where sports activities are taking place. And there's also the risk of dog attack. Now, it is rare. The vast majority of dog owners are highly responsible. They're really interested in their dog's welfare. They're really interested in people's welfare around them as well. Where a town or parish council has opted out of the controls, and as Janet said, they do have that right, we will be working with them coming up to the next review of the Public Space Protection Order to more fully understand what the issues are that led them to withdraw. And if we can have that dialogue with town and parish councils to facilitate them taking the controls on board, with the new PSPO that will come in 2023, we'd be very pleased with that as well. So I think it's about us speaking to the town and parish councils well in advance, and we'll start that dialogue next year, particularly with those councils that haven't adopted the measures this time around. Thank you.
Could I also add that the consent has been given to specific, I think it's Red Cots and Lee Park, so it's not all of the area, it's specific pieces of land where residents have basically decided that they don't want the restriction, and it's to do with the marked sports pitches.
Thank you. Thank you for the answers. Move on to the next question. At page 19 at 10.8, is the amount of money in the fixed penalty notice set by an enforcement authority, or is it laid down in law? And is the amount that, if it is, if the amount of the fine is set by us as an authority, does that warrant a sufficient deterrent?
No, Chair, it's set in regulation.
By law. Thank you. Page 2021 at 13.2 to 13.5. Much is made in the report with regards to dogs and their owners regarding Lyme Regis Front Town Beach. But what about members of the public, and particularly children, being able to use a safe beach free of dog fouling? And so the latter part of the report dealt with Lyme Regis quite extensively. And I had a read of the report, and certainly within the beachfront area, the Front Town Beach and Church Beach, the small one, which certainly the Church Beach appeared to be, whenever I visited that area, has had a lot of, it's the only sand one, isn't it, in the area, which I think was imported, the sand, to create the beach, if I remember rightly. And that beach is very popular with sunbathers, and particularly with children, because it is the only sand beach. So I just want assurance in the fact that, as laid out within the report with the PSPO, that the rights of other people that are not dog owners, don't own a dog, don't have a dog, that they have an equitable right to that area of open space in that beach.
Thank you, Chair. So the Front Town Beach is the sandy beach. So that is the one with the current off-peak restriction of dogs on lead. So that is in response to the fact that we wanted, we didn't want to exasperate the issue with dog fouling. So we have kept that restriction there, Chair.
If I could move to page 22 at 13.9 to 13.10, what can be done to ensure evidence and enforcement can lead to prosecution of offenders besides 13.13 with parking wardens? And I was just wondering whether or not officers are considering the fact that they could use volunteer members of the public to do dog patrols themselves, much in the same way as we at various parish and town councils train up Speedwatch members of the public. The report says that there is because the area being covered, there is insufficient number of officers to cover the area, and it's leading to very few prosecutions.
Thank you, Chair. If I could pick that up, we are starting to look at enforcement roles within community and public protection and the role of enforcement officers, and how we can enable town and parish councils to take part in enforcement activities in a safe and proportionate way. And the use of volunteers will be included in that consideration as well. However, we don't want to put people who are volunteering in any form of risky situation with enforcement. So we will have to have a clear view on that and take our responsibilities really seriously if we're looking to work with local communities. And as Janet mentions in the report, we are looking to use local communities more for spotting of issues and for problem areas, and I think that's where there can be a really good role for volunteers. It's giving members of the public who want to take an active role good contact details so they can report issues quickly, or they can speak to a dog warden personally and feel that they're being listened to and can be directed to specific areas to focus our enforcement resource. So I think from a volunteer perspective, that's the sort of approach that we'll be looking to develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. If I can move to a question about when we come to 2023 to review this, and whether any thought is being given to where significant planning developments have brought forward saying sites, suitable areas of natural green space, or other recreational open areas, would it be reasonable to bring dog bans in areas such as parks and recreation grounds in those towns and villages in order that children have a safer environment to play and exercise, as well as those members of the public that are partaking in sporting activities and laid out and marked pitches? So again, it's that balance of what is right for the dog and for the dog owner, which I appreciate, but also that we give a safe environment for our children in which to play in those recreation grounds and those play areas.
Thank you, Chair. So officers will certainly look at any new developments and where there is there will be provision for play areas and that sort of thing, and that will all be part of the consultation process and the findings from that. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, if I can move to page 39, within the report, we've got a consultation from the Kennel Club. And I'm just raising this as I was a bit surprised that we had that one consultation from the Kennel Club, an organisation that, as I understand it, is not without its critics, including some of the veterinary profession. So I just wondered why the Veterinary Association was not similarly represented in the report, and other organisations such as RSPCA. Did they not form any part of the consultation? Did they not come forward with any view?
Thank you, Chairman. The Kennel Club are active in consultations around public spaces protection orders, so it's not unusual for the Kennel Club to make a submission to a local authority. It happens across England and Wales. The public consultation was primarily publicised in the Dorset Council area because that's where the orders were in relation to. But you know, with social media these days, it did go wider, and so we did get we had responses from people up in Birmingham who came down to Lyme Regis or Weymouth for their summer holidays. So the opportunity was there for other organisations to respond, but primarily it was focused at Dorset, to Dorset residents and Dorset businesses. The Kennel Club probably have some sort of tracker watching out for PSPOs coming up for consultation, and it enables them to respond effectively.
Thank you for the answer. Okay. Yeah, so my final question, you'll be pleased to hear, is with regard to private landowners, and particular reference to English Heritage and the National Trust. What influence or control do we have as an authority in advising or insisting that dog-related PSPOs are adhered to in the Dorset Council administrative area With particular regard to dog fouling on Dorset's chalk downland, there is a nutrient-poor soil that supports rare orchids and other rare flora and fauna. Dog feces take 8 years to decompose, as I understand it, where in herbivore animals takes a year. Therefore, a risk of changing over time the nutrient content of the soil and encouraging invasive species or plants in the area. I'm continually minded with officers, particularly conservation officers, how precious our environment is, and I just wondered how this can be incorporated into the PSPO. How much power do we have? How much influence do we have over those various landowners? Thank you.
Well, the PSPO covers all open spaces unless the landowner has asked for specific or general consent. So it will cover those areas, but they are vast open spaces, so we don't patrol in those areas, to be honest. We would wait for the landowner to contact us to say there's a specific issue, and then we can agree what sort of support we give them. But normally, people like the National Trust actually manage their own lands, and they don't really want us on those lands. The exception to that is that we do Knoll Beach and is it Shell Bay? Is part of a dog on lead restriction that we do patrol and we do sign for. But the bigger pieces of land, the open spaces inland, we don't patrol unless they ask for us to visit. Yes.
Thank you for your answer. Thank you. Next speaker is Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of points that have arisen. My ward is probably, amongst us here, the closest to Lyme and Charmouth, where there isn't currently a member. But the postbag in the Bridport News, which is our local weekly, has had an awful lot about Lyme. And the demographic, I believe it has the highest number of over 85-year-olds of almost anywhere in the country. And the topography, the steepness, means the beach is one of the only areas that a lot of the elderly residents can actually walk to. And it is further compounded, as you say in here, by the tide, because areas like the Church Beach almost totally disappear at high tide. So it is a problem. I think if everybody cleaned up, the sort of early morning and later night might be an option, but people don't always clear up, and that. So that's just really a comment on Lyme. One other on the chalk down. Those chalk downs were created by grazing by animals, and those animals produce manure. I think I saw that study, and I think it was in another country where it was a very concentrated amount of dog that was altering the status. I'm not sure in our vast areas that the amount of dogs we have materially affect the minerals, the manurial status of the chalk. But and one further point, could we just please, right at the end, just above your signature, on page 50, no, or 50 or 26, depending on which. We do not have a Seaton Beach at Chiddock. It is Sea Town. So it's S-E-A-T-O-W-N. I think we ought to correct that. The residents might not appreciate that. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts, for your observations. We can move to Councillor Took now.
Thanks, Chair. Just one thing came up to my mind during the report and the presentation. The enforcement officers can potentially be subject to aggression from people they're talking to. I'm assuming there's a reporting mechanism back so they can say, look, I had this problem. Is this a problem, a large problem, and does it get beyond verbal aggression? And if so, how can we better support those officers to fulfil their role?
Being an enforcement officer in this sort of role is actually really difficult and really challenging a lot of the time. You have some lovely people that you meet, but then you have those people who want to challenge things or are just very belligerent in their attitude. So all the enforcement officers obviously undergo training, and we hope they're at a stage where they're confident to carry out their duties. We do have a health and safety process whereby if there is a particular incident, the officers can report that, and we go through a number of steps just to make sure that, well, one, they're okay, because obviously, you know, there's various welfare services we can offer if that is an issue, but also that it's not repeated. I'm not aware of anything that's been reported through that process in recent years, to be honest with you. I think the whole point of their training is that they de-escalate, you know, these situations, so it doesn't actually get to that point, and they're always told, if you feel unsafe in any way, you walk away. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Took. Councillor Canning is my next member to speak.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points that have come up. One thing that's really impressive about this whole report, I think, is the big commitment to consultation and the very large number of people who put forward their views when this scheme was introduced. I just wondered if you'd given any thought, or if you have put in place any sort of panel of people who we could regularly go back to. I think we do it in other parts of the council, so that we can see changes over time. Because I can see why you want to focus on a particular issue and you set up a group and you look at that group. But often what's very useful is to look back at the same group of people and see if they've noticed any differences, improvements, or things getting worse or whatever, so you can measure the response over time. Has that been done at all?
Thank you. That's a good observation. It started me thinking about whether we need to, in preparation for the statutory review in 2023, whether we need to pull together a panel, perhaps a panel of members, and also a small cross-section of residents to work on, to look in more detail at some of the issues that have come up during the life of this order, to see how we can improve it in the next order, in the next round, and anticipate some of the issues that might come up in the public consultation. So I think that's something we'll take away from the meeting and help us develop the consultation for 2022-23.
Good, thank you. My second question really is, it says in the report, I can't remember exactly where, but there are 20 approved town and parish council operatives who have the authority to act on this. Is there a target to increase them by more? And if so, what is the target? And are there any particular barriers to that happening? And also, how do you relate to councils who haven't joined this scheme? Do they have their own powers to deal with this issue in their towns, or is it something that can only be done via the scheme?
Thank you, Councillor. We're always encouraging the town and parish councils to authorise more of their officers, and we do regularly have training sessions. So every 6 months, I think we ask town and parish councils, have you got some officers that, because we pay for, we put on the training and we pay for the training for them. So the last one I think we had was about 6 months ago, so we're due to do that round again. I think the issue that the town and parish officers have is that this isn't their substantive role, you know, this is an add-on to their role, so it's really difficult for them to focus on dog fouling or making sure people don't walk on the sports pitches and that sort of thing. Yeah, but we are always encouraging more officers to be authorised, because at the end of the day they need to be there, they need to be local, because they're the people who know who the repeat offenders are and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think one of the problems is that it's not a problem until it is a problem. That's the trouble. And if people think that there's no problem, they don't do anything about training, people don't have officers in place, And then when it does then become a problem at some point in the future, there isn't anybody on the ground who can actually go there and deal it and have the powers to deal with it, because we've only got a couple of staff ourselves. That's correct, isn't it? So the vast majority of enforcement is actually going to be done by the town and parish councils.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch your point. Sorry.
I'm more concerned about how we expand the number of people who are qualified to take on this role. Because we ourselves only have a couple of people, don't we? So we're very much reliant on town and parish councils.
Thank you, Councillor. If I can just pick this one up. We're really keen and have good positive working relationships with our colleagues in town and parish councils. It tends to be the town and parish councils where there are specific issues. So it's more likely to be the resort town councils, where there's a high level of influx of visitors during the summer months, where fouling problems occur. So that's where the majority of our authorised town and parish councillors are. We do look to increase numbers, but of course, as Janet said, it's not a substantive role for their officers. They're doing a whole range of other duties as well. I think what we need to develop further at Dorset Council is the awareness raising, and also improving our intelligence. And that's to say that more often than not, it's a very small number of people who are causing problems. And we need the intelligence to say where those repeat instances are occurring, so that we can use our enforcement officers in those situations who are highly experienced. We have around 5 animal welfare and dog control officers, and enforcement is part of their role. So we do have resource there, and they are experienced. And where we're given information about specific hotspots, we will take action. But the information about those hotspots is what's key to us, and that can come from the town and parish councils.
Councillor Heatley.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say that I think that the overall balance of this system is about right in terms of the interests of dog owners and the interests of those who do not own dogs. There is always going to be a huge amount of dispute about it, and you're always going to have a lot of dog owners who say, my dog is fine, it doesn't need to be controlled in this way. But I think in the end, it's got to come out like this. I would make one point about it, though, which is that it is often difficult to remember quite what the restrictions are and so on and so forth. And I think I would caution against too much fiddling with the system. I mean, there are constantly people saying, we want to change this bit, we want to change that bit. You hear from them, but you reduce the effectiveness of the system on all the people who have internalised this is how it is. And I think you should, on the whole, resist too many changes to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. Did the officers wish to respond or not?
Thank you, Councillor. I think when we developed the new order, that was one of our aims, to simplify it as much as possible, to harmonise the rules. So that's certainly what we keep in the back of our mind, and that's what we will be doing moving forward with the statutory consultation for next year.
Thank you. Okay, members, if I can just refer back to the recommendation on the Lyme Regis to review the issues of availability of dog exercise areas in this locality, officers to continue to work with the Town Council and other interested parties to explore options. So members will have read the report from the Chair. My own personal view is that while several of the beaches have mobility issues, such as the Fontaine Beach and Eastcliff Beach, which also has tidal problems, Monmouth Beach, which has mobility issues as well. The Riverline Walk, the Pine Walk, both seem acceptable. Timber Hill, again, mobility issues. And Stone Barrow at Charmouth appears to be acceptable. Seaton, which has some restrictions on it, but again acceptable. Charmouth acceptable, and Ypres acceptable. The one that stood out to me, members, was the Church Beach, the sand one at the front, which my view is to officers is that should probably have a dog restriction on it in terms of the use on it, because of the number of public that does use that, and there's a sand one in the area. I just wonder if members have any other views on that and what recommendations they'd like to make to that recommendation in the report. Is there any hard, fast thoughts from the members? No? Okay. So if I move to recommendation 2, in terms of the enforcement, the thought that had and that has come out in this meeting was, could members of the public be trained for the role, given greater coverage in line with Speedwatch teams, which I think we've covered within the discussions today, which I think officers, you said that you were thinking along those lines as well. I don't have anything for recommendation 4. Does any member have anything coming for recommendation 4? I'm sure some will probably come out in the debate that Ms Watson will pick up on later. No? Okay, so if I move to recommendation 5, which is the public need a go-to place on the Dorset Council website where they can report the report needs to be easy to use and well advertised. And I think the officers have already said that they're quite content with the members of the public being able to report instances of either continual dog fouling or dog attacks, dog on dog or dog against humans. So, okay, I think we covered that. So members, can I take those recommendations on block with those other additions to them? Are we happy for that, members? Thank you. Thank you. Second. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to propose en bloc.
Seconded.
If all members are in favour? Thank you. Thank you, officers. Thank you, Ms Moore, for a very comprehensive report. Thank you. And thank you, Mr Duggan, for your input. Okay, if I move to agenda item get my paperwork sorted out. Agenda item 9, performance scrutiny, a review of the relevant Dorset Council performance dashboard to inform the scrutiny committee's forward plan and identify items for deep dives. Committee members to flag up if any areas of potential review. So the items aren't for discussion at this meeting, but just something that may be put on our forward plan to be brought before this committee in the future. So if I can go to the Operation Corporate, Councillors Piers Brown, Brian Heatley and David Shortell, do you have any concerns that you wish to flag at this point? Thank you.
The main one would have been the searches, but we've dealt with that separately.
Thank you, Councillor Heatley. So if I move to operational place, Councillors Mark Roberts, David Tooke and John Andrews, is there anything you wish to raise at this point in time? Councillor Tooke?
Yeah, a couple of items on the that are showing red continually on the RAG report. We've got roads and housing, and that's house build out, which is not this council's responsibility to make happen. It's the developer's responsibility to build the houses. But continuously, they seem to be building fewer houses than is required. And yet there are an awful lot of planning applications that are outstanding, that have been granted but not yet built out. And I'm just wondering if we can identify what those sites are and how far past the planning permission granted date we are. And if we're more than 3 years, is there anything we can do to, they may well have put a trench in the ground, so they've got over that normal initial condition. but is there anything that we can do to help encourage them to move forward with actually building the houses? And my second question is related to roads. And the roads are in a fairly poor condition. The report that went to Cabinet showed that various kilometres of principal, non-principal and unclassified roads, and what percentage of those were in poor condition. And if you do the maths, 9.32% of all Dorset's carriageway is in a poor condition, which I think is unacceptable. And I'd like to see if we can look at in the future what options we can do or we can take in order to improve that situation quite rapidly. And those are the two areas of concern for me.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, did you have anything?
Just on the planning permissions that are, I would like to see not only the number and the age, but the number of properties that the planning permission was for on those sites. So we get an idea of how many there are currently not being built. And that would be very useful when our parish councils talk to us about not having, well, they want development so long as it's nowhere near their village. And it would be very useful to have some data about how much we're waiting to see built in Dorset.
Councillor Tuck, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I wish to agree wholeheartedly. I think that's an excellent idea. It's important. I mean, it sounds odd, but it's important in terms of new planning applications going in. Because if we're failing the delivery test, then developers can simply start to earmark other bits of land to get a planning permission on when they haven't yet completed what they've said they're going to do in the past. And it starts to lead to development being far less well controlled than it should be. And there's also the danger that if we don't get build out properly, then we can object, parish councils can object, Dorset Council can object and refuse, and then they go to appeal. And because we haven't got the build out completions in place, not our fault, the developer's fault, but because we haven't got those in place, they will then be granted permission to build anyway. And I think it's something that we need to tighten up on a great deal. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Could I just come back? With a previous hat at West Dorset, or West Dorset and Weymouth, the combined, we did have a team who were meeting with developers to encourage and to try and overcome any of the issues. Do we have a current team doing that? And if so, how successful are they being?
Mr. Selgren.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. So the straight answer to Councillor Roberts' question is yes, we do. And in fact, Matthew Piles, as the Corporate Director responsible for that, had a meeting with agents, I think a week, if not a fortnight ago. So there is a regular process for that. I think the more fundamental question that's raised by Councillor Roberts is that matter of the build out of sites. That is a national problem, not one that is just restricted to Dorset. The LGA regularly publishes the figure. I think it's now well over 1 million of consented sites for housing units that haven't been brought forward to development. Unfortunately, councils don't have the powers, Chairman, to do that. On the point about the land supply and the delivery test, of course, that is very much linked with the local plan matter. And of course, this council is committed to progress the local plan. And many of you have seen statements made by the leader of the council in recent weeks about that issue, actually, of making sure that there is appropriate and sustainable development in Dorset, and that is something that can be delivered through the new local plan for the council. I'll perhaps rest it there, Chairman, but if there's any further supplementary questions, happy to take those.
Thank you, Mr. Selgren. So I think, Mr. Watson, if we can capture those with a view to putting those on the forward plan. So the final one is HR, Councillors Andy Canning and Councillor Bill Trite. So is there anything that you wish to flag up, Councillor Canning?
Not really at this time. I think there are issues with staff retention in various departments, but I think that we're going to leave the other scrutiny committee to take the lead on this, because it affects people much more in children's and adult services than anything else.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Yes, I think you're right.
There was one issue that I think was identified in the reports, that different directorates did seem to have different average sick days. And I wondered if that was something that maybe ought to be brought to the fore, because I know that Place, for instance, had a much lower average sick day than Children's Services, and it was just possibly looking at some sort of explanation about the difference and what the acceptable levels, did each directorate have a different acceptable level?
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Yes, I did speak with my colleague, Councillor Taylor, who chairs our partner committee for people and health, and she's going to look into that aspect, particularly around Children's Services, as Councillor Canning said. But certainly we can have a look at the other directorates that actually come under our responsibility to have a look at those. Thank you. Councillor Andrews?
Yeah, I thought you were going to come to me, Chair, because you asked the other two that was on. My concern is over the health and safety stats, and we're on red, I see, for near misses and reportable accidents. So I just like to understand that, and also understand why the last reporting figures to that were December 21, and we're now in March, and we have nothing here for March, January, February at the moment. And I know it, obviously the February figures won't be reported until this month, but I thought the cut-off date was about the 7th or 8th, I'm not sure. Yeah, a little bit concerned about that we have reportable accidents that are in red, and staff non-reportable accidents are in red, and number of staff near misses in Place are in red. So have we got an issue with training, health and safety training, et cetera, et cetera? So just asking that question, really.
I think a part of this surrounds the COVID and officers returning to work. And I think when you actually draw down into percentages, I don't think it's that much of an issue. But Mr. Selgren, did you want to respond?
Chairman, happy to do so. If I may, perhaps on one or two other points that perhaps members would like an answer around that have been raised in the course of this part of the questioning. So on near misses, we've taken a very conscious decision as leadership team in Place to encourage and promote near miss reporting. So that will create some sort of surge. And the reason I think members appreciate the sound reason for that, it's because a near miss, and knowing that and be able to take corrective action and appropriate mitigation, hopefully avoids the risk of the actual more serious incident or indeed fatality happening in the worst possible case scenario. So near miss reporting is a very important indicator, and when we first started to monitor this, we were concerned actually it was very low, which suggested to us that there were near miss incidents taking place that weren't being reported. So we've deliberately pushed that we want this indicator, we want the amount of reporting to be increased to make sure we are picking these things up and addressing them in a timely manner, and it's for that reason members are seeing that reflected in the performance monitor. I'm hoping that what you will see is that will settle down, but it's very much part of our no complacency around health and safety approach, which I'm hoping members will commend. The other one on the staff sickness, so in answer to Councillor Roberts' question, we monitor, as all directorates do, to a local government norm or set of norms around sickness absence. We do look at it monthly at the Place Board, the directorate, the meeting where we monitor performance across the piece, and our HR business partners work with us to deal with the hotspots. So in the main, we've got a couple of known hotspots. The reasons for those higher levels of sickness than we would wish for are known and are being addressed. When you break the data down within individual sections of the directorate, in fact, we have much of it that actually performs extremely well. But as ever, the point about performance reporting is in a sense to focus on the things that you need to improve, not just around congratulating yourself on the things that are going well. Chairman, if I might, Councillor Took raised the point about the highway statistics. If it would be helpful for this committee to perhaps have a more detailed report about the Council's approach. I think many members are familiar with the asset management model that we use that drives the investment in highways and making sure that we maintain that asset to the highest possible standard. I think in fairness, and again, as members will know, we're looking and we continue to lobby hard both at officer level and through the leader of the council's regular meeting with the MPs about the amount of funding for highways that government is giving out nationally, because a lot of the funding that we receive comes through direct grant rather than through the general locally raised taxation. So if it would be helpful, Chair, for you to have a report which deals with those two matters, to talk about the services approach to maintenance and to look at perhaps the historic pattern of funding and our expectation about future funding. If you would find that helpful, Chair, I'm sure that's something we could arrange. I hope I've covered all the points. If there is anything else, do please prompt me. I hope I've covered all the ground.
Thank you, Mr. Saragrin. Yeah, I think the committee would welcome that report. Councillor Took.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be interested to see that. I mean, what concerned me was not only the fact that principal roads and non-principal roads are both in the red, but the report to Cabinet identified quantities, and it came out nearly 10% of our roads are poor, not just below what they should be, they're poor. And the phrase that was in the Cabinet report about this was managed decline. And I'm not sure I like the idea that we're going through a phase of managed decline. Now, I appreciate and understand that a lot of this is down to revenue and cost, and government could do an awful lot more to help than it does. But I think for every 1 mile in 10 that we travel is on a poor road, I just don't think that's acceptable. So I'd like to see a report that shows how we're going to improve that going forward, if possible. Thank you. Okay, you've had a steer of the report that's going to come forward that we'd appreciate. I don't want to debate this issue right now. It's just to flag up issues that we're going to come to our forward plan. But thank you for your concerns, Councillor Took. Councillor Roberts, did you want to speak? Did you want to speak?
It was really only just to say the encouragement of near misses. It was another body I'm involved with, the Southern Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority. I chair that authority. We're active, as you can imagine, boarding boats, sometimes in quite difficult conditions. Near misses are hugely important, and we encourage all officers there to, and it does improve the training no end, so I think it's very valuable.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. Ms Watson, if we could capture those then and have that informal discussion to populate our forward plan. Councillor Lacey-Clark, you wish to speak?
Just wanted to clarify the managed decline, just so we are aware. Roads don't get better by using them. They slowly decline, and we have to manage that decline of the roads and try to reduce it and keep them going for as long as possible. I wanted to make it very clear we're not intending to get rid of all of the roads in Dorset. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Lacey-Clark. Yes, my understanding is it is a term that comes down from government, I think, and we have to manage in a very, very tight budget that road condition. Thank you. Okay, members, I'm going to move to agenda item 10, Place and Resources Scrutiny Committee Forward Plan. Ms Watson, just to quickly run us through it.
Okay, just to sort of point out what we've got coming up at future meetings. At your next meeting on the 25th of April, we're expecting a report with regard to the Dorset Highways Works Term Service Contract. That's an overview of the performance of the contracts during the previous year. And then just moving on to May, there's items on the TICs and the decision taken by Cabinet to close those TICs and the arrangements that are being put in place by town councils and communities. You've got the next in the biannual reporting for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Strategy report. And I think there's one other item for May. Oh, just to be confirmed, coming out of your meeting in January where you looked at plans for tourism in 2021, it's a look forward in terms of what the plans are in place for this summer, taking into account the activities during half term and Easter. So we just need to confirm that the detail of that one, but hopefully that will come forward in May. There are obviously items on your forward plan moving forward further. You have some regular items like your performance scrutiny and the climate reports, that sort of thing. But I think I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Ms Watson. And obviously we will have our informal meeting with members to populate that forward plan. So if I can move to agenda item 11, Cabinet Forward Plan. Ms Watson, take us through that as well, please.
So just to set out, the reason that you have the Cabinet Forward Plan on your agenda is so that you can see what's coming up for future Cabinet meetings. The idea is that you can take a look and see what decisions are going to be made by Cabinet over the next few months, and there might be something there that you want to schedule into your forward plan for a future date in terms of doing a sort of a post-decision review of how that decision has been implemented, the action that's been taken. Again, we provide the most recent Cabinet decisions as well for that same reason, for you to see what decisions Cabinet have been taking again, if there is something there that you would like to schedule into your forward plan at a period in the future to do a sort of a post-decision review of. So those two documents are provided in your agenda. They cover about the next 4 months. There's quite a few items on for Cabinet in April, but obviously it's a living document, so it continues to be populated. So I think it's just a case of whether there's anything in the forward plan or in the decisions of the recent meetings that members feel would warrant a post-decision review at a period in the future.
Thank you, Ms Watson. Does anything jump out at any members that they'll take a look at? I'm just wondering whether in the future that we would like to have a report back on the bus back better provision. Yeah, in should we say 6 months? Yeah. Yeah, assuming. Do we have a time frame for that?
Imminent, Chairman, is what government is telling us. What you might want to perhaps do, I would suggest, is it might be sensible if you set your review so it's sort of full 6 months or 9 months after we've received the money, and then you'll have something to scrutinise the risk. Otherwise, as you said, a date, and it's only a couple of days before we receive the government money. But I am hopeful, I'm optimistic that government will be getting out very, very soon.
Thank you, Mr Selgin. Yeah, eminently sensible option. After we get the money, we'll review it after 6 months. Thank you. The other one that I picked up on was the leisure services review, as to whether Scrutiny should have an ongoing rolling report on that leisure provision.
Chairman, if I might, the Cabinet recently, at the most recent Cabinet meeting, the portfolio holder, Councillor Miller, indicated that she was going to initiate a wider, more strategic review. Perhaps you, I and portfolio might want a discussion about the appropriate time for the leisure review work to be considered by this committee.
Thank you, Mr Selgin. Thank you. Okay, if no member has anything else, I'm going to move on to agenda item 11. Okay, agenda item 11. Sorry, we've just done that. Agenda item 12, sorry. Urgent items. There are no urgent items. So I move to agenda item 13, exempt business, and there is no exempt business. So at 11:54 members. I will close the meeting. Thank you to the officers and thank you to all members for your participation. Very much appreciated. Thank you.